Hi, I'm Corey Walmsley. I'm CEO of Aurora Coriolis Publishing. I'm also an author of 9 books and a book coach and an editor. And today we're going to be talking about how you know when it's time to start writing your story. Um, I know it could be kind of challenging because we are always moving through something. We are always at some point in our journey until we end our journey. As long as you're alive, you should be growing and changing and experiencing things, right? So it can be kind of tough to say, okay, this is the day I'm going to start on my story. This is the time that I'm ready to put it out. How do you know exactly when on that journey you're ready to start your story? So a couple things come into play here. You will have this feeling that it's finally time to get it out there. Now, the nudge might be, I need to get writing, or it might be, hey, it's time to tell the world about this story. But there will be some sort of a natural stopping point, not necessarily a conclusion. Some things are really obvious, like if your child is going through some things and they graduate from high school, and then that's where the end of the journey was. That might be an obvious stopping point. Or if you're going through some sort of an illness and you come out on the other side, that might be the stopping point. That could be really obvious. Maybe you've been working on your career and you've come to the point where you've decided to quit your corporate job and start something new, and you want to talk about your experience in the corporate world. Okay, that's an obvious stopping point. But for those out there who don't have that obvious stopping point, some of the things you have to look at is, does this feel like a completion? Does it feel like I have come through some sort of a hurdle and come out at the end? Is there something that I can advise on? Is there something that I feel like I've gotten enough under my belt that I've come to hope, or I've come to joy? Sometimes when you're doing like a psychological sort of journey, if you've gone through depression or if you've gone through some sort of a healing thing, you may feel like now is the time to tell your story because you finally feel whole, or you feel complete, or you feel comfortable sharing it. So those could be kind of your markers for now's the time to tell my story. Another challenge that you may run into is, how do I know when I'm done writing my story? Because if you're still going through those pieces, how do you know when it's done? You'll have to write until you get to that natural completion point, that natural stopping point. You want to continue writing until the story is told. So it needs to feel like, hey, we've come to some sort of a change. Whenever you're watching a movie, reading a book, anything that is fiction, you'll notice that when you get to the end, the main character has gone through some sort of a change. They've gone through a journey. There's been a transformation. Maybe so not to brag, but I watch a lot of Hallmark movies in the evening when I'm just trying to decompress, because they're super predictable. They always have a happy ending and they're not stressful. So I'm not sitting there worried about a character. And as an empath, I worry about about characters. So I'll watch these things. And one of the natural story arcs that they like to use is two people who meet and they hate each other immediately. And then as the story progresses, there's something that happens that causes them to actually be cool with each other. Okay, so that's part of the story arc. That's where there's that big change. As they continue on and they fall in love, whether it's believable or not, I've seen some that are really not believable. Once they've, come to that point where they've fallen in love, um, you see that there's been a change. There's been some sort of growth. A lot of times the one person will see something from a different perspective than what they did at the beginning. If that's the case, that can be something that's happening to you. Maybe you've gone through this change and you see something from a different perspective. And maybe that's a healthier perspective than what you had before, disregarding what's going on in the movies, because sometimes it's just ridiculous. But if you personally have gone through some sort of a change and you've started, seeing like, oh, okay, maybe I need to do this, maybe I need to do that. And you get to the end and you're like, wow, I had that change in perspective. And that's what got me to this end point, this growth. Then that's when your story is going to end. We see a lot of movies, a lot of we read a lot of books where there's a character that has a, dynamic journey. They've gone through a change because they've grown, they've gotten more mature, they've, kind of graduated from their youth. And that's a theme that happens throughout our lives. We all go through these like this block of innocence, and then we come out and say, wow, now my eyes are open. That sort of a story can apply to so many things. It can apply to working a corporate job and then coming into entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurship is very different from working a corporate job. It's very eye-opening. And I remember when I started, my own business journey and saying, wow, now I understand how other people were thinking when they created these businesses. Now I understand, all these different things. So that might be something that you talk about. Another type of journey that you may go through is a spiritual awakening. So if you, were living your life a certain way, and then all of a sudden you started, having some sort of experiences, maybe you found Jesus, or maybe you discovered that you can hear voices from beyond. And I've heard people tell me these stories, and those were always big eye-opening moments for them. That might be what your story is. So you want to get to that point where you can say, I've come through this change, and this is how I've changed. This is what my life is like. And always remember that the hope and the joy are the things that you want to focus on. You want people to get to that end point and say, wow, the end point is way better than it was at the beginning. And I can do it too.